I'm Erica Hollingsworth, and you're listening to the F1 podcast.
What's up, everyone? It is Richie here from the F1 podcast. Happy Tuesday, December 3rd, season 4, episode 35. Andrew, we're almost to the end, and there's still a lot to play for in the constructors. While Max Verstappen did win again in Qatar, um, there was a lot of controversy with this win. Not so much him per se, but with the number of safety cars, a broken window. McLaren, they had it from the sprint race and it looked like they were doing well, and then a very controversial, uh, I don't know what you want to call it.
Well, you know what they say, Richie, you can't spell controversy without FIA.
Do a
So
barrel roll.
I'm here with Andrew from the F1 podcast. Andrew, how you doing, my man?
I'm good. We are gearing towards the end of the year. It is holiday season, but unfortunately, it's also the end of the F1 season too. We had our penultimate showdown there near Doha there on the weekend, and as you mentioned, quite crazy of a race. It looked pretty boring for the first half, and then the second half was just pretty lit.
Yeah, so let's just quickly go into the sprint race, because this was the last sprint of the season. Uneventful to say the most. I mean, let's be real. I think the focus right now is on the constructors for a number of teams. Ferrari has not won it from since 2008, as I've talked about in previous episodes, and McLaren hasn't won it since 1998. So a lot to play for points, and mission accomplished for McLaren to get as many points as possible from the race. Oscar and Lando getting 1, 2, and Ferrari, I think it was 4, 5. Also really interesting at the end of on the last lap of the sprint, we saw the team orders switch for Oscar to win the race. And now, was that really meaningful, or was that really necessary? Because now, like, after Sunday's events, like, Leclerc is only what I think like 9 points behind Lando from second. So, anyways, moral of the story, it was like, I guess, the sprint race, nothing really exciting. All the focus was on Sunday, but you said Colapinto had a funny moment in the sprint.
Yeah, like to go back, I think what Lando was nice to Oscar Piastri, considering what Piastri did for Orlando in Brazil, and how that was a potential in terms of like championship points at the time to repay him the favor. Just a nice team gesture in that regards. Kind of goes towards the end of the season on a high note for the team, and it didn't affect them in points anyways because they scored the maximum. But yeah, with regards to Colapinto and our favorite Sergio Perez, who doesn't have a seat next season, apparently. I don't think I've ever seen this, Preachy. It's, Perez getting overtaken in the pit lane at the start of the race. Like, I don't think I've ever seen that before.
To quote one team principal, I think his name is Christian Horner, that when the light turns green, you go.
You lose.
Yeah, he just stood there. It's like when you were in traffic and someone's looking at their phone texting while the light's going, and then you're like honking behind them to go. That's what Colapinto was doing, but instead of honking, he just kind of went around him and he said, "Thank you very much. I'll take that place for free." Sort of idea. I have no idea what Sergio was doing for the first 3 seconds there. I mean,
Half
the
a bear.
safety car got a better start than he did.
You lose.
Like Burt Meinlander had a better start than Sergio Perez.
Um, yeah. So anyway, yes, we talk about that nice gesture, maximize as much possible points, and let's get into Sunday. Also, during the qualifying, Verstappen was accused of slowing down George, and despite he got pole, the FIA decided, okay, well, you kind of were slowing down. I mean, that's up to debate because George wasn't really on a hot lap there, or was it that Max Verstappen's mechanics didn't really let him know that George was coming maybe faster, but not on a hot lap. So yeah, George had to start P1 on Sunday behind Verstappen, and didn't take Verstappen very long to get it back.
No, I mean it took him all of about the start, like about 3 seconds for him to take over and going into turn one. But man, like what a great storyline for the end of the season, eh? And just Max basically calling George a two-faced person. In the post he goes, basically Max, to reiterate, said like he in front of the camera, George is one type of person, but behind the scenes, and as he alluded to in the steward's meeting room, he quoted, "I've been in the meeting room, so steward's room, many times in my career. I've never seen someone trying to screw someone over that hard." And then for that, he lost all respect. So this is like a fire shell quote, which I kind of love personally. I love when Max just doesn't give a shit and he just kind of like pieces his mind. And like sometimes you wonder how these drivers act behind the scenes. And if we're kind of starting to see how George is starting to act behind the scenes, I don't know how people are going to be appreciative of that, but that's looking like a rivalry that's going to go into next season. And we kind of need some of those new rivalries, those new bloods. We got Max versus Lando, now Max versus George. At some point, it's going to be Max versus the world.
I think it already is Max versus the world, to be very honest with you.
Fair.
It's going to be a very interesting because I think they play pickleball together. I don't think they're going to be playing pickleball anymore, or maybe there's going to be no couples getaways to I don't know Italy or something wherever these guys go. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Usually I thought you keep your comments pretty quiet if after a Stewart's room or you don't talk about what's said in it because a lot of people don't realize is cameras don't go into the steward's room, so it's like what really happens in there. But yeah, he just didn't give an F, to be very honest with you.
No. So, the start of the race, we had lap one, plenty of lap one incidents, right? We kind of had Ocon get sandwiched in between Hulkenberg and Colapinto. So that kind of ended Colapinto and Hulkenberg's race, right? Ocon kept going, but, no, maybe I'm misquoting that. No, sorry. Ocon and Colapinto's race pretty much was done after the first lap. That's right. And
Yeah.
then Lance Stroll also had a little bit of altercation with Alex Albon, which then forced him to kind of retire after 8 laps. So again, Williams just having another problem out at the start in the race, just being involved in incident after incident in that regards.
And I think it's pretty ironic because it's like we talk about the controversy back in 2021 at Abu Dhabi with like Nicholas Latifi, and then it's like now that Alex Albon played the character of, oh, my mirror is probably going to be the reason why McLaren potentially will not win the constructors. You had multiple, I guess what it was, I'm just thinking like, I'm just looking at my notes here. You had multiple, safety cars, multiple drivers go out, retirements, chaotic start. I mean,
Well, and it didn't
go ahead.
really, I said the race was kind of dull until lap 29, lap 30, when Albon's mirror just completely like flung off
Mhm.
and was stuck in the middle of the track where there was a double yellow that then waved, but there was no safety car. And the FIA's decision to not put a safety car, again, this is where people are complaining a lot because there's also like there was numerous penalties that came after these safety cars, right? That it really affected Lando Norris's race. And I think the issue right now is we're having is that I don't think people complain so much about the penalty. The only way that it's just the controversy isn't the penalty itself. The controversy is the FIA's decision on how they implore the penalty, right? Because I don't think people are upset. People are just very upset with the inconsistencies that FIA and the stewards have with regards to dishing out these penalties. It might as well like something like an incident happens. You might as well get the wheel of penalty, fortune there. Just wait, just throw it down, right? And see what goes on, see where it lands. And lap 30, the double wave yellow goes out with the mirror being on the only DRS part of the track, and Lando Norris did not stop under double wave yellows. Max figured that out based on the time that he was able to gain on Max when he did slow down for those double wave yellows. And that resulted in a 10-second stop and go penalty, which I thought was incredibly harsh. Like I understand maybe a 10-second, 20-second penalty. I know that Max is, received maybe like a 10-second penalty, but not stop and go. Like to me, I don't know about you, Richie. To me, I just feel like it's such a they've claimed it was because it was like a very you have to do it was very unsafe. But in my opinion, it was very unsafe for the FIA not to take out the safety car because the mirror was in the middle of it. I know it's not on the racing line, but it's in the middle of the track where it's the only overtaking part of the track. And people go into the middle to do their overtakes.
And you had Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton's both cars that are, I don't know if it's the cars or the tires are now under investigation because they both got punctures. And like it literally fell off, and it says, I mean, you look at that, yeah, just talking about what you just said. I don't want to repeat you, but like especially when like a lot of teams are gonna like they need to kind of get those extra points and have to fight at certain spaces. And if it's that on that one strip, where everyone's going to, it's a DRS zone, it is fast paced, like, red flag the session if you have to. Like I that was what confused me. And then I think, Ferrari maybe was given a little bit of a gift there because if he had that stop and go penalty and like was able to win the race, then we'd be talking that McLaren has won the constructors. But like that,
Also, like the case, like the FIA they made an argument that they didn't feel that the safety car was necessary at the time because, again, they said it wasn't in a main part of the track that was an issue. Um, but in my opinion, and they also said they didn't want to create a safety car position where it was going to affect the results of the race. But I mean, your priority is safety first and foremost. It's an unfortunate situation, and that's going to happen, right? Like that was a random event, right? Alex's Albon's mirror flying off into the track, right? But it is on your job to ensure that the track maintains safety. So who cares if you put the VSC or the SC out to, clear the debris for maybe a lap? Yeah, you build everything back up, but again, safety is paramount in this situation because, as you mentioned, Sainz and
Lewis.
Lewis drove into the debris, and who knows if that affects cars, right? We've seen, like, imagine if the mirror, did what the kind of like what it did in Vegas last year with Sainz's car, right, and created a massive puncture in the gas tank engine sort of idea, which rendered the car then useless, right? Like that is a possibility that happens, and they need to be more paramount at safety as opposed to determining that's going to affect the results of the race. Like, who cares?
And also to think about that too, Andrew, like not only that if Carlos, he did get that puncture, then he would get slapped a 10-second penalty or 10 grid penalty because he has to exchange the parts because the FIA did not
You lose.
issue the safety car because that's the joke that they were saying in Vegas is that drain gate or whatever was not his fault, but because he had to switch all the parts, they still slapped a penalty on them. Yeah, and like now that this is kind of, there's been a lot of debate and, we kind of looked at that, like we looked at the footage and it's just, I don't know, I just find it very mind-boggling. I know there was a new race director who just started, that was his second race. And it's like, you think that this season, like towards the end, it's going to be quiet. It's going to be, no, a lot of people were pretty pissed off with some of those calls.
Well, it was an absolute clown show. Like it was just a circus, pretty much. And it's been a circus all season with the stewards. Like, God rest his soul, Charlie Whiting is probably rolling in his grave right now, seeing what is happening to his beloved FIA. And then I bet you Michael Massey, we had a bunch of controversy with him, but he wouldn't have let this flown. No way. So, like, he's probably laughing, as rightfully so, right now, because it's just been an absolute gong show. The stewards are all over the place. And we can't fault the FIA director because they're not the ones making the calls here on the penalties, right? It's the steward's job. So there's got to be some, again, level of consistency here. We've heard drivers complain about it, right? We've had Hamilton complain about it last year, this year, with regards to, stewards flying with driving personnel on certain planes, right? Like that shouldn't be happening, right? Conflicts of interest are everywhere in that case, and that's what leads to these inconsistent decisions. And but to be fair, the safety cars added a great ton of racing at the end. We had, after the second safety car was in, Max had a bad jump, but he was able to fight Lando side to side and was able to go ahead with that. But unfortunately, Hulkenberg, spun out in the gravel, right, which caused another safety car. So, and also Perez lost his drive So
Did
he
he
was
lose
done
his
after the
drive
season.
or did he lose his driver's seat?
You lose.
Well, technically he's lost both now. And yeah, so we'll get into it later, but it will after this race assessment, but just Perez's weekend goes from bad to worse all of a sudden, right? Has a mental lapse in the pit lane start in the sprint race, and then his car has a technical issue with regards to him spinning off, and then kind of ending his race there. I joked that his car had altitude sickness from being so high up on the position in the grid.
Do a
I think
barrel
it was like
roll.
P5 or P6.
This is his first retirement since Canada of this year. And I mean, you know, Britain, he had 17th place, Azerbaijan 17, Mexico 17, and then Singapore, I think, was 11. Just like kind of thinking that he was, he needed to bounce back or help with the points. Because now, I mean, we always talked about like we didn't think that Red Bull was going to have a shot at the constructors as we saw the emergence of both McLaren drivers and Ferrari, and I was kind of, and if that's the way that he's going to go out of his season, I'm like tough. Like,
Well, and now they're mathematically eliminated from winning the Constructors' Championship. And Helmut Marko had a good point last week saying that, or, made it, sorry, not a good point. He made a comment last week that said, um, the Constructors' Championship positioning affects like personnel bonuses. So Perez's inability to be able to score points in the way that Max has really not only affected him, but it's affected his entire team and the pockets of this entire team. So that's a tough pill to swallow if you're Perez, knowing that now you're kind of affecting everybody else in the room.
yeah, and I mean, I'm curious who is going to now step into his position if it is true, because like we saw, I think ESPN posts that we haven't seen a confirmation message yet. But like, let's just talk about some other things that happened this weekend. F1 stake finally got their first points this season. Joe finally. I mean, Bottas was close, but like, yeah, talk about like for a man like with so much was going on this season for the stake team, and just the inconsistencies of them just being towards the bottom. Yes, some luck was on their side with the number of drivers being DNF'd, but like they finally were able to get on the podium, not on podium, sorry, get into the points.
Yeah, ironically enough, their last points finish was in Qatar last year.
Oh,
So Qatar is a very good track for Sauber as stake, F1, kick, whatever you want to call their team now that they're changing. But it is again, it was nice to see, especially with Joe. He doesn't have a seat for next season. This could be his final race in F1 for all we know. It's nice to see him getting the points in
this
that case and kind of hopefully end the season on a high note.
Yeah, that equals his career best finish, Canada 2022, and assures that Kick Saubers avoid their second pointless season in their histories. Whoosh. And also he showed great pace throughout the race. Also, Pierre Gasly looked really well this weekend, driving to fifth place from 11th. He showed how far the Alpine has come.
He's really put that team on his back to get to that P6 in the constructors, and really just been able, like, if the third, as Crofty keeps alluding to, it's like the $30 million race, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, again, big points, 10 points, that really puts them up. It really gives a good stranglehold for P6 in the constructors there. And I believe that Fernando Alonso's P4 finish or P7 finish makes it very, very hard very hard for Alpine to get to that P5.
Yeah,
So that would be good for Aston Martin to be the best of the rest in the midfield for us.
the score ended Aston Martin's fourth race pointless streak and gave the team a much needed boost. And I think obviously, yeah, he played remarkable, even though that his partner didn't so much. So let's now kind of focus on, is there anything else that we should probably talk about at this race?
No, I think we can get into preview of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and it's going to be a very memorable race, I think, Richie. There is one person in particular who will be driving his final race start for Mercedes
Yes.
this weekend, and before he goes to the Scuderia, which I'm sure you're very excited about. I got some stats out for Lewis Hamilton based on his performance at Mercedes. So we'll go. So this will be his 246th race start for Mercedes. And in that 200, well, in the 245 races prior, he had won 84 times. So a 34% conversion rate, win to race ratio, 153 podiums, 78 poles, 50 wins from those 78 poles. So Lando Norris, take note. It's a 64% conversion rate. Only 2 seasons where he didn't win a race where his best finish, I guess, then was P2. So, I mean, he was, he's always up there in the points. It will be his lowest ever championship finish will probably be this year for them at P7. He won 8 World Drivers' Championships, 6 World Constructors' Championships, and reached 3,937.5 points scored for Mercedes in his 14-year career there, which is just quite impressive. It's going to be sad to see him leave, but I think it's going to be very exciting to see him then go to Ferrari next season.
So yeah, I think let's talk about that. I think you said 8 drivers. He's at 7. He's still tied with Schumacher, but that's why.
Well, he's won 6 with Mercedes.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
6 with Mercedes, 1 with McLaren.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be really exciting. Yeah, I was like, I know it's gonna be an emotional week for him, an emotional week for Toto Wolff and the team. That Sir Lewis Hamilton has brought this sport, like especially with him in the Mercedes jacket and the silver arrows, to like the highest peaks possible. And just thinking of some of those races, Andrew, that he was in that Mercedes car, like I can just think there's just been so many, like he was a force to be reckoned with up until 2021. And even like this year, like winning at the British Grand Prix, like and showing how much that meant for the team and what they've been able to accomplish. So I think while it's exciting for him to kind of go to Ferrari next year, and don't get me wrong, I'm probably excited to see what he can bring to the table. There's going to be a lot of, I guess, how do I say this? There's going to be a lot of pressure probably on Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz this weekend, because they need to catch McLaren, and especially for Charles, now that Carlos is out of the picture, and then Lewis is gonna come in. Like, what is the legacy of Charles Leclerc without Lewis Hamilton? So they're probably really going to be gunning to try to get that constructors championship for the Scuderia for the first time since 2008.
22 points they have to make up on McLaren to win it, 21 to tie.
Yeah.
But I think McLaren, I don't know if McLaren has a tiebreaker in terms of best finishes. They might.
I think it's because of the second place finishes. They have more second place finishers.
Right. So yeah, so Ferrari need 22 points. I think this is also a track like Vegas that supports the Ferrari car a lot better than the McLaren. So I think they have the edge track wise there. And it's just a matter of Charles and Carlos being able to convert. So I'm excited. I'm just very happy that the final race of the season, there's something that goes down to it. Whether it be in drivers, but no, at least it's a constructors championship that's going to go down to the end. Excuse me. You almost wonder if the FIA's decisions in terms of penalties this past week were to make it so that this was going to be the case. But we can only speculate here. That's what we do best. But no, it's just something nice to watch that on Sunday we can look forward to a battle. Right. And also, we're going to be looking forward to some final farewells potentially too in the sport.
I think, yeah, I mean, that's if I have to summarize the 2024 season, I think it's battle. We saw some amazing race wins and amazing drives for a number of drivers, and it was not like the Max Verstappen domination show that the previous seasons have had. But yeah, you talk about it. One driver that unfortunately we're not going to see, he got just dropped literally yesterday, Esteban Ocon. It seems, I don't know why, I don't know the understanding, but Jack, is it Doohan, who will jump in? He's obviously replacing him next year, but he had a special livery or special helmet for this. And then I think the quote came out to this was not what I decided, or this was not on my terms. So
Which is just, I think, ridiculous. I mean, Doohan's going to be with you next season, right? Like, why? I don't like just like give Esteban his final race. I mean, he he has won like their previous race, or I can't really, he's like one of the one of two previous races, right? Like,
I think it
in
was Hungary.
Hungary 2021.
Yeah.
Give him, I know he's been an issue. I know this beginning of the year we discussed about how much of an issue he was been for Alpine. But my God, like if you're gonna then sack him during the season, not on his final race with the team, right? And there's some rumors about it so that he can do the testing with Haas tomorrow or the day after, sort of idea. But then I'm like, then Carlos Sainz shouldn't be racing at Ferrari if he's going to be doing the test for Williams on the Monday, right? So it's just BS being spewed out there at Alpine. It'll be unfortunate because I did see the livery was really nice, or the helmet. It was really nice to see the decals on that. But yeah, I mean. I think this would be now like the 23rd or 4th driver of the season to be 24th driver of the season, which is nuts.
But it's also like I think it's on paper as the longest F1 season. I would love the fact check to come up. So like yeah, I guess that has allowed more multiple drivers to have to jump in and replace or come in when if the team doesn't feel fit to do it. I mean, yeah, we're I don't know if that's Valtteri Bottas is going to be last race. We're going to see multiple drivers like all Nico Hulkenberg will probably be his last race with Haas. I think Kevin Magnussen, his last race as well. Just looking at the list here and just trying to see if I got everybody. And then
Yeah,
yeah,
Hulk going to Sauber next year will be interesting. But yeah, Magnussen's final ever race. Zhou could be his final ever race. We don't know.
also Valtteri
Perez,
Bottas. Yeah, well,
yeah,
if he
Perez.
makes it this
Well,
week, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, Valtteri Bottas. I don't know, Richie. I sent you a screenshot. I was on the F1 store looking for some Christmas ideas, Christmas shopping ideas, and I go to the Red Bull page, and there's three drivers in the side of who's filtered on the Red Bull. There's Max Verstappen, there's Sergio Perez, and then there's Valtteri Bottas.
What?
So are we like, is this like confirmed? Is he going next season to Red Bull?
Did the admin screw up again?
I don't know. This is where I'm confused. I know he's supposed to be Mercedes driver, reserve driver next season, but imagine if he goes to Red Bull as the second seat. That would be crazy.
It's the comeback story, especially with how much they've struggled. He struggled this season. Um, Man, that was pretty wild. I really hope that that's the case.
And we're also going into a part of the season too where we have won probably two seats now where we don't know who's going to be in them. They're both Red Bull team seats. One being their senior, one being their junior team. But I mean, this weekend might be again. It's a tryout, right? For Liam, for Yuki, right? To prove that they should be taking over Perez's seat in P2, or is it Valtteri Bottas's turn to like,
Play
win
spoiler.
some points and make his case?
There is a lot to tune in for the last race of the F1 season. Just really quickly predicting who do you think is going to win the constructors? I think for me, money's on Ferrari. I mean, they got a lifeline last weekend, and I think they can be able to top them, the McLaren boys.
I mean, McLaren, like 22 points is a hard gap to fill up with 44 points. But you know what? I'm gonna go for the red this weekend. I always, you love a good comeback story. You love a good underdog story. And Ferraris are the underdogs just based on where they are going into the weekend. But if they can pull it off, it'll be for great cinema. And it would be kind of like a nail in the head to Zach Brown for some of his decisions early on in the season, where he lost some key points in like Austria. And not only did it affect his World Constructors Championship, but then his World Drivers Championship.
I guess on that note, let's end this week's episode of the F1 podcast. Tune into next week while we'll talk about the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. I'm Ricci. This is Andrew. Have a great rest of the week. And, it's only Tuesday. So much can happen. Make sure to follow us on our social media pages. And thank you all for the support. Been seeing a lot of support on Threads lately. So thank you. We'll talk more about Montreal next year. So make sure to follow our social media pages. But But on that note, this is the F1 podcast. Richie and Andrew, Erica couldn't make it to this week's episode. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week as we will cover the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and end off the 2024 Formula One season. Thanks so much, everyone.